Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Complete Comedy Media Podcast. Really excited. We're going to have a really fun night tonight. We received some really tough news yesterday. The comedy world, Canada, many people have lost a legend in the comedy world. I decided to bring on a guest that personally got to be on stage with him, got opportunities to meet him. And I immediately thought of this guy when I heard the news that Norm MacDonald passed away yesterday at the age of 61. Greg Kettner has been on the show before, but we're really excited to bring him back and have a chat about the legend of Norm MacDonald. Thanks a lot for joining me, Greg.
Hey, Darren, thanks, man. It's always good to catch up with a good old friend, and I'm happy to be back on and share. It was a weird day, like you were saying, right? It was just like, ugh. But last night for 2 hours, I went through YouTube and watched all the old clips, and just the memories it was awesome. And I'm fortunate to have those memories with a legend like that. I got lucky. It worked out, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, last time you were on, we talked about you having the opportunity to meet Robin Williams and, having that opportunity. And, I remember being there. I remember, you telling the story of, sitting down next to him and having a chat and kind of pretending that you didn't even know who he was. And then, about 15, 20 minutes later, he's on stage doing a comedy bit. Tell me about the night that you ended up on the same bill as Norm MacDonald. You must have been thrilled to death because he is a legend.
Yeah, absolute legend. Well, 2 years before, or a year before I got to work with him, I was working with Yuck Yucks, middling, featuring, and then started. I was at the point where I was starting to co-headline, so I'd worked my way up from the ranks, and I was in Calgary getting ready for a show, and he dropped by on a Wednesday night to do a show, and I didn't start working until Thursday. And so I'd asked the manager if I could just do a 5 spot on the Wednesday show, right? If there's another comic in town, they'll give you a 5-10 minutes or whatever. So not paid. But anyway, so I went up, and then I got off stage, and all of a sudden they go, yeah, next up, Norm MacDonald. He just popped in, right, to do some time. And I was like, okay. So we chummed around for a little bit, and when we got to know each other when I was at the Canucks, and I dealt with so many of these celebrity types that, to me, they're just another person. I mean, cool, Wayne Gretzky, whatever, right? Yeah. And so, after the show, everybody's like all chit-chatting and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, hey, you're funny, man. I really enjoy you on Saturday Night Live, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And we just, sat there and had a beer kind of thing. And then a year later, I was wanting to go to him because he was playing at Yuck Yucks there in Canby. He was there all weekend, so 5 shows, one Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. And because I was a comedian, I didn't have any extra cash, right? And tickets were $40, right? I mean, it's major headliners coming in. Yeah. And so I called up the club owner and just said, hey, I am a huge fan of Norm. Is there any way I'll pay for my 2-drink minimum, but can I just get in the back and stand by the exit door or whatever? I love the guy. He goes, well, I'm glad you called because they forgot to book an opener, or they forgot to book the MC.
Really? Wow. Okay.
He goes, do you want to MC the show?
Huh? Woohoo! I'm in. Boom. You were probably down there faster than you'd ever been down there.
Yeah. No, it was about well, the show's, I think, the show's at 7 or 8. But anyways, about a half hour before the show. So I jumped in the car, ran down. Boom. And I got into the club, and just like I did with Robin Williams, I pretended that I had no idea who he was.
Good for you.
So I walked up, and what was his name? Josh somebody was his opener. And so I walked into the club, right? And, it's before the doors aren't open yet. And I see them in the green room. I'm like, hey, everybody, I'm Greg. I'm the MC. And they're like, hey, Greg, how are you? I'm like, what do you guys want? How do you want me to introduce you?
Right.
Norm looked at me like, well, I'm Norm MacDonald. I go, and you got any credit? And he was just baffled, right? And I don't think Norm got it, but the other guy kind of did, because I'm like, oh, I haven't met you. He's like, oh, I'm Josh. And he's like, here's what you can say and whatnot. And so and then I said, I absolutely know who you are, and I'm almost scared to be on the same stage with you. He goes, dude, we did it in Calgary a year ago. You're fine. Just tell your jokes, be yourself.
Sweet.
And that was a Thursday night. That was about, I think that was 3 days after Amy Winehouse had passed.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
So we're sitting in the green room, and I'm like, how am I going to impress this guy, right? Like, he's a comics comic. Everybody wants to work with Norm and hang out with Norm. And I'm like, how am I going to make this guy laugh? Because he's got off. Obviously, if you listen to enough Norm, if you YouTube and don't watch the Netflix special, he can be off sides. And so I got up there and we started the show. It was packed, 200 people. They'd all pay their $40. It was a hot crowd, and nobody was really listening to me. I'm like, hey, welcome. We got a headliner, and they're like, yeah. And I started my set with, I said, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but Amy Winehouse recently quit drinking.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody's like,
Too soon.
I'm like, no, it's too late. It's a good joke. She's never going to hear it.
Nice. Good thinking, bro. You're on it. Boom.
With my regular PG kind of middle of the road, whatnot. And so I went up, and then I brought Josh up. Josh did his half hour, and then I went up, so people go to the bathroom and what to bring Norm up. So I went up, I told one more joke, and I was getting ready. I'm like, are you ready for your headliner? And the place erupted, right? Everybody's standing on their feet. And the manager comes running up to me. He goes, you got to tell one more joke. Norm's not ready. I'm like, what? He goes, tell another joke. I went back to the microphone. I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I got to tell you one more joke. Norm's taking a shit. The crowd, they're like, oh, he's taking a shit. Like a applause break for that. Yeah. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I told another joke, and then I said, hey, this guy needs no introduction, Norm MacDonald. And he came up on stage, and he did an hour and a half. Wow. But he came up to me afterwards in the green room, and he goes, hey, I was listening to your set. I didn't hear much of it, but the biggest laugh of the night just before you brought me up. What was the joke? Because I heard Amy Winehouse, and I heard the last joke. That's all I heard. And I said, the manager came up and said you weren't ready, and I told him you're taking a shit. And he goes, I was taking a shit. And I go, a 12-minute shit? And he goes, that was a 12-minute shit. You heard the first joke and the last joke.
That is amazing.
And we just were howling about that. And then then I went home and got there Friday night. And on Friday night you have the two shows, right? The 8 and the 9 o'clock, or 8 9:30. And so in between the shows, I went outside out the back door there, you know where it is at Yuck Yucks, and had a medical cigarette. And and he comes walking over, and he's like, I like the smell of your cologne. So I shared my medical cigarette with him. And then afterwards he came, he's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, I'm going back to my place. He's like, do you mind if I come and hang out with you? And I was living in Colby's basement apartment, and I had tried getting Colby Fackler to come to the show, but it was the first night. His wife had made plans, and she just had a baby like 6 months before, so it was the first night to go out, and he's like, I can't, man, I'm gonna lose so many points if I bail to go to Norm. And so I'm like, well, you ready to go? And I was like, yeah, I got a driver. So the driver pulls up, we get in this car, and I give the address, and the driver's like, oh, you sure you want to go there? So he drops us off. I mean, this is way before Uber. And I'm texting Colby. I'm like, hey, come outside your front door. Norm MacDonald wants to say hi. And he's like, whatever. So he opens the door. I've never heard a 32-year-old scream like a girl. He's like, oh my God, Norm! He comes flying down the stairs and hugs him. And Norm's like, who's this? We sat up and sat in my couch in my basement apartment for, I don't know, it must have been 4 or 5 in the morning, because we went to the diner on Main at 4:30 in the morning. But he told us stories about how he got fired from SNL. how he got into stand-up comedy. He was just a beautiful, beautiful human being who genuinely loved making people happy and making them laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he comes across that way. He doesn't, it seems like he doesn't really give a shit if people love it, but because they love it, he really works really hard at his craft. He seemed to really want to have the material and go up there and you know, be able to take an ordinary life and turn it into an extraordinary life.
Yeah.
And he worked really hard at it, from what I hear and what I've you know, heard him say. He said, you know, there's guys that can just be automatically funny and just you know, just naturally always say things that make people laugh, but I had to work really hard at it. But I just love, I always have loved just the way he can start a story and just be chatting away about something, and
Hours
and
later.
it's just weaving and you're wondering where it's going, and then all of a sudden, bam, out comes the punchline, and you're just like, holy cow, is that brilliant? Like, and there's very few people that can do it like him, if any. He just had a way. He just had a way of just seeming like he was just talking regular, like we would, you know, sitting there having a drink, and all of a sudden, bam, you're just laughing your head off.
But that was it. I mean, he had the ability to take conversations, you know, and I don't know this for sure, but you know, you'd have a conversation with him, and he wasn't trying to be funny, but
Yeah.
just the way he talks, his cadence, you know, his laugh at himself kind of attitude was just,
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah, brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant.
So
The last
brilliant.
time
Yeah.
I saw him was it a year and a half ago, just before COVID. He was playing at a casino about 45 minutes here in Washington State, 45 minutes
Wow.
away, and I didn't have his phone number or anything, so I twittered him. And I'm like, hey, I'm coming to your show. Like, leave me a ticket if you get the message or whatnot. So I got there. There was a fucking ticket waiting for me.
Wow. Cool.
And
That's
so I
great.
was there, you know, I mean, usually when you're doing a bigger show like a casino show, you're in the green room an hour before so you can prep, and, you know, or you just kind of hide out and watch the audience, see what the audience looks like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just waiting at the gate. I had nothing else to do. And there's some other people waiting there, and he he comes walking by and he's like, hey, Greg, Vancouver. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, Amy Winehouse.
Nice. Wow. That's awesome.
You know?
Still remember the Amy Winehouse
Yeah.
joke. That's so
And
great.
so
Wow.
people are like looking at me like, who is this guy? This guy must be the opener. And I'm like, no, I know Norm. We're both from Canada.
Nice.
We said hi, and he goes, hey, I'll come find you afterwards and we'll hang out in the green room. And so he did an amazing show. Like, he was working on some new stuff. Comedians can tell when another guy's working on new stuff, but it was good. The audience did know, right? The paying audience.
Yeah.
And afterwards, we're just back in the green room, and he had a couple fans come in and did some autographs, signed a book, took pictures and stuff. And his opener that night, Matt Billen, who's from Vancouver, Matt and I worked a lot together. Really good guy as well too. And so it was Matt and myself, and we hadn't seen each other since I left, you know, 5 years earlier. And Norm, and we just started talking about life, and, you know, what should we order for dinner, boys? Right. So we finally ordered a pizza that came to the green room and stuff.
Cool.
But we probably sat there for 2.5 hours. Like, my wife started texting me like, where are you? You should be home by now. I'm like, oh, I'm still hanging out with Norm. Sorry, honey. I'll see you in the morning.
No doubt, eh?
But, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, he had a memory, probably photographic memory, but he was the nicest guy, just the nicest guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he always came across that way. And I just remember how many appearances he had on Conan.
Yeah.
I just loved how he just would be able to just break Conan up all the time. You know, I've never heard Conan laugh more than when Norm was on there. It seemed like Norm was kind of their standby guest. And
Yeah.
in case somebody bailed, somebody couldn't make it, he would always kind of fill in. A lot of times he would be sitting on the couch next to the guest, and you know, throwing his little quips in there. And I saw some of the quotes from Conan, and he said, you know, I just don't think that I'll ever laugh as much anymore that Norm's gone, because he just always had me laughing. And you know, I had to watch a bunch of those clips last night. I went onto YouTube like you did, and I started doing it today too. And man, it just brought me back to so many times watching those great moments of his, and he, you know, able to do that. I heard him today talking about how he got the gig with SNL
Yep.
and got on that weekend anchor desk,
Yeah.
and that really solidified him and just made so many people appreciate him. He was quite offside there, and eventually led to him getting fired. But you know, I don't think he would have had that popularity if he didn't, you know, push that envelope and do what he did.
Yeah. No, he well, he got fired because of he wasn't I guess one of the NBC executives, the way he told it to me in the basement, was that one of the executive producers or something was buddies with OJ. And then once OJ got acquitted, he went on the Weekend Update and did this joke, and he's like, "Yeah, so apparently in California, it's okay to, you know, it's legal now." He said something like that. He said
Man.
that hours after the jury gave their verdict, they released 3 pictures of additional suspects. So they're hoping people can find them. So here are their pictures, and it popped up. It was 3 pictures of OJ Simpson.
Oh, Jesus. Wow. Amazing. Wow. Yeah. Just, yeah. And I think they just said he had carte blanche, you know, at the time. He said, you know, I heard him say that they gave him suggestions, but he's like, those are suggestions. Like, you know, those aren't like, don't cross this line, don't do this, or I would have not done that. But they were like, oh, maybe you don't want to do that to Michael Jackson. He might see you. And he thought, wouldn't that be amazing? I'm in court. Michael Jackson's suing me. Like, how fun would that have been?
Street cred.
Yeah, give him that street cred. I see that his first appearances were at Yuck Yucks
Yep.
back in Ottawa. Said in about '85,
Yep.
and he said he was doing stand up about 6 months, and he got an opportunity at the Just for Laughs festival,
Yep.
and that seemed to really
Kind of
put him
cool.
on the radar for, you know, a lot of people here. Obviously through the U.S., Just for Laughs, you know, became something quite big over the years. But it's pretty cool that you know, your first performances were Yuck Yucks, and his was too. And then, you know, you guys end up working on the same stage there here in Vancouver.
Yeah, and he did kind of start out. His first show was at the Banff Springs Hotel out of Calgary.
Okay.
He told me this story as well too. I said, "How'd you get into it?" He's like, "Well, I was living in Vancouver, a dead end job, and I didn't know what to do. And I was dating this girl. Probably shouldn't have been dating her, but she had more money than I did." And he goes, "I woke up one morning, and she was gone. She's like, I'll be back from work at 5 o'clock." And he says, "I don't know what happened. Like, if she just cashed her work check or something," but he said it was $1,200 on the kitchen table. He goes, "When I see an opportunity, I take it."
Wow.
So he packed up a duffel bag, got on the Greyhound, and was headed back to Ottawa because he was born in Montreal, grew up in Ottawa. And he said they got to the Banff Springs Hotel, and the bus pulled over, and he was sitting there, and he was all nervous, right? Like, he just left his girlfriend, stole her $1,200. And this is, I mean, this is before cell phones, right? I don't even know if they had rotary phones back then. But so he said he was sitting there, and they stopped at the Banff Springs Hotel, and he was looking out the window, and they started pulling the bags out, and he saw them pull his bag out, and he's like, "Oh no, she found out, she called ahead. They're getting the cops. They're going to take my bag and arrest me." So he said he went running off the bus, grabbed his bag, and went and ran it into the hotel to get lost so everybody could find him.
Oh, wow.
And then he's like,
Wow.
"Well, I guess I got to get a room." But he saw a sign for Yuck Yucks had a show that night.
Seriously.
And so he decided, he goes, "I've always loved stand-up. Here's my opportunity. I've got nothing else to do." So he went to the show, talked to some of the comedians afterwards, And they said, yeah, you just need to go to any Yuck Yucks and start, you start with your 5 minutes. And once you get funny or people think you're funny, then you move up to 10 minutes and then to 20 minutes, then you're middling, and then you go back to MC because it's tougher to, figure out your crowd and stuff. And then, when you got a solid 40, 50 minutes, then you're headlining. And so he said he went in there and he started talking to these guys, and he goes, 5 minutes. And he goes, I got 5 minutes. So he said he went up, did 5 minutes. He doesn't remember much about it, but he said it was the best drug he's ever had. That 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
But it was
you told me that too, right? You after your first appearance and you got some laughs, it just became addicting. It was a drug, right?
Yeah. And just to have people laugh and see the joy, and yeah, it's fun.
You've worked with hundreds and hundreds of comedians. You've spent time with them outside. Outside of just being on stage and stuff, it feels like he was one of the top special ones to you. I feel like he really impacted your life a lot.
Yeah, well, and we became friends, and after the last show on that Saturday, the first weekend I worked with him, I had my set list in my pocket, and it was at Yuck Yucks. I had an ADD joke, a joke about Maple Ridge, Hong Kong, swearing. Amy Winehouse is on there. Single, Facebook. So afterwards, the Saturday night, I remember this. So the early show Saturday, we were sitting there, and we were both single at the time. And after the show, we're in the green room, and this girl pops her head in, just gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. She's like, "Oh, I want to get a picture." So Norm and I walk out there, right? And I grab her phone and hand it. Take her phone and hand it to Norm. I'm like, "Hey, Norm, she wants a picture of us." And he was like, "No, I think she wants a picture of me and her." I'm like, "No." Right? So we had this whole thing going on. So after the last show, I said, "Hey, I would love some, advice. You give me a lot of good stuff to think about this weekend and whatnot." And so I handed him my set list, and he took out a Sharpie, he turned around, and he wrote on my set list. And this was the advice he gave me. You see it there?
Hey, Greg, don't do crack. That's great advice.
That's probably the best advice I've ever been given in my life. And it holds true to this day.
Nice.
And I would have done crack, but Norm said no.
Yeah. I was happy that you had framed that. That was really cool. Right after I texted you, when I heard the news, you sent me a picture of him and you. Can you show that? Do you have it? Can you pull that up on your camera? Yeah.
I texted it to you, right?
Yeah, you did. You texted it to me. And great to see your arm in arm. That also sounded like a great night with Andy, mutual friends of ours. Tell me about what happened with you and Andy that night.
There was after. It's not working out well. My phone's.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry. There we go. There we go. I think. There it is. Oh, there you go. There you go. Nice. Yeah. Wow.
So that was right after the lovely girl that we were both attracted to took a picture of, he took a picture of me and her.
Nice. What year would have been that first meeting? What year would have been?
It would have been 08, 09 probably.
Okay. Wow.
When did I leave? I left in 2011, I think. No. What am I talking about? I don't know. Anyway, so Andy and I, we went, one night he wanted to go for a late dinner. And so it was that night we went to Main Street. So I called Andy up and I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's like, sleeping. I said, "Well, let's go for breakfast with Norm." And so yeah, we went to the diner, and people at the diner really didn't know who he was, but there was some girl that had seen him at the show during the weekend, and she popped by, and she was like, "How do we get rid of her?" I'm like, "I don't know." So he had to talk to her for the whole meeting. He was very irritated, and Andy and I were just sitting there laughing at him.
Yeah, that's amazing. Are you surprised that he kept his cancer diagnosis so
Yeah,
private for that many years?
over.
Supposedly 9 years, battling it. Were you shocked that nobody really knew?
Yeah, no, I was, but in hindsight, when I heard the news yesterday, I'm like, what did he look like in at the casino? And he didn't look himself. Like he looked like he was tired and lost some weight and stuff. I'm like, oh, good for him. He's working out. Um, but he didn't look himself. And hindsight's 2020. But you know, I'm not a doctor, but he looked different than when we worked together. But I mean, people change, and it'd been 6 years between the time we worked together.
I listened to a podcast today that he did. It says 5 months ago with Mark Maron on the
Okay.
WTF
Yep.
podcast, and he said he was never really a big drinker, never really got into bad drugs,
Yeah.
but he was addicted to gambling.
Oh, yeah.
He said he blew through his money 3 different times where he went to flat dead broke. Why do you think most of the comedians have these addictions, that have these demons, have these things that they have to battle through?
It's weird, but loneliness,
Okay.
right? You're on the road.
Mm.
Say, when I went on Yuck Yucks on tour for 6 weeks, and you have one show Thursday, two Friday, two Saturday, and then you're trying to hustle to find other shows, right? Because unless you're headlining, you're trying to save as much money as you can. But you've got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all day Thursday to do nothing other than sit in your hotel room or drive in your car to the next place. And it can be lonely. I mean, it's really tough to keep a decent relationship on the road, right? I mean, you're gone all the time, and you're in front of people, and there's all kinds of things. But there's a lot of, and not just comedians, but I realized after doing stand up full time for 6 years, I now know why a lot of comedians or rock and roll people die in hotel rooms. It's boredom, I think, and it's very easy accessible as well too, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been offered cocaine after a show because people thought I was funny. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good.
Amazing, eh? Wow.
You have a medical cigarette, sure.
Right. Yeah. Definitely partake in that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but I would say just the access to it and nothing to do.
Right.
There were a lot of comedians that worked out of Vancouver that had day jobs, right? But they're the ones that had kids and a wife, and the comedy was shits and giggles to them versus this is what I want to do with my life.
Sure. Yeah. Full-time thing. Do you think the shock of this has hit you yet?
It hit me pretty hard yesterday, and my wife's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, just weird, man. Like, I'm pushing 50 in January, and I'm now at that age where you're hearing people, dying because of cancer or an accident, or it's just. And so it was weird yesterday, and then I was watching Norm MacDonald sitting in the couch crying last night, and then I woke up this morning like, it can't be real, man, Norm. So I don't think the total impact, and I mean, it's not like it was a buddy of mine, which would, there would be the shock and the disbelief and the pissed off and the hurt and whatever else goes along with grief. But yeah, no, it'll be lasting. I remember when Robin Williams passed, I was at work, and my manager, Kurt Comer, he's like, dude, because we had, it was a job, it was an open office, right? So you're just long tables, and everybody's got their, desks on top of the table. There are no cubicles or anything. So he leans back, he's like, dude, check your email. I'm like, why? He goes, check your email. And he sent me a clip that Robin Williams passed by suicide. And I was just like, no, what? Like I'm like, you're shitting me. There's a fake website or something. And after about a half hour just sitting there, just blanking, I'm like, Kurt, I gotta go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm useless. So it wasn't like that. But it's just, I don't know if it has, but it sucks. It absolutely sucks because, it wasn't like one guy that I heard one joke before that I laughed at. Like, I liked the guy when I got into comedy. I liked him before I got into comedy. And then I had the opportunity to work with him several times. I'm like, this is amazing. And the fact that, he remembered me 6 years after the last time I worked with him is just pretty cool. I must have made maybe it's my giant head. Maybe that was, I don't know. But when you say Greg, Vancouver, Amy Winehouse, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad for that. But you're a memorable person. And, I think most people, after they get an opportunity to spend some time with you, they're going to remember you. And especially when you're bringing them up on stage too. Yeah, with some really hilarious quips and anecdotes and stuff. And I always love watching you do your comedy. And I was always, I told you this last podcast, but I'll say it again. The day that you told me that you have quit your job and you're doing comedy full time, it was super inspirational for me. It was like, wow, I love seeing people do something that they naturally should do and what they love. And, it's a leap of faith that's very challenging and difficult for most people to do. And I was so proud of you and so happy for you that you did it.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, man. And you never know, right, when you're going to be an inspiration to other people. And I just try to live my life to do the right thing, to be kind to other people, take care of Mother Nature, and if I can get people to laugh, well, I've won the game of life.
Yeah. Well, that's been one of your main themes for your humor lab, and you're pushing 20,000 subscribers, members to that. That's incredible. You also recently said that you have achieved a life, or I don't know if it's a lifelong goal, but a very, very, very long goal. And you're going to be getting up on stage very soon to do a speech that I'm sure you're super excited for. You've been working really hard at. Tell viewers and listeners about this exciting news.
Yeah, I was just working with my my speaker coach this afternoon, and I practiced it this morning, and I'll practice it tonight, and I'll do it all the way up until October 9th. But I will be a TEDx speaker in Spokane, Washington.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and the title and the gist, obviously I can't give it all away now, but the gist is I'm going to be sharing some stories on the power of humor and how it changed my life and how it can change the world.
Cool. Wow.
So
good for you.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it go viral and let's change the world, man. Because you're bringing humor into people's lives on a daily basis. I love it. It's something that I check out many times through the day, and it gives me that little pick me up. I've never been a Facebook guy until very recently. I think you knew that. I don't even really know how to post. I don't really even know how to get, throw some extra humor stuff on there. But it really brightens up my day, the things you put on, and all these members that you have that are really good at putting funny little things on. And it is really helpful, especially going through the COVID, going through all the tough times we go through. Most of us are spending a lot more time at home than we ever used to. And we've got that device in our hands all the time. And it's nice to just open it up, have a little laugh and put it away, and then go do what we have to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. The coolest thing about the Humor Lab, it just kind of took off, but it's a community effort. It's not me running the thing. It's everybody putting their own sense of humor, whether you like silly dad jokes or puns or cat memes or whatever it is, right? But I was blown away that there's 20,000 people on a Facebook group that's non-political and PG-13, which is great. Yeah. That way your grandma can read it, your daughter can read it, your 7-year-old can laugh as well.
Yeah, no, it's so smart of you to make it PG and to just just, straight up humor. There's just funny things that happen every day and people see online, and boom, it happens so often. So,
And I should give a plug out to the Humor Lab because it was because of Annette Bergevin.
oh,
It's a
wow.
Walla Walla wine. I had one, maybe two bottles. And I'm like, I got to start a group for humor. So I'll give a shout out
Nice.
to Annette Bergevin. Thank you for the
You also that's great. Yeah, great. You also do podcasts for the Humor Lab podcast. I see them online. The one that's made me most excited was getting Theron Fleury on,
Yeah.
and that was a really big thrill. I always loved him and appreciated all he's overcome in
Yeah.
his life, and it was so great that you had an opportunity to bring him on. Tell me about that podcast.
Yeah, no, it was great. I got to know Theo through my good friend Eric Kusin, who has a charity. We're all a little bit crazy. It's about mental health. And they tell their stories, what they gone through. And so he said, "How can I help you?" We were talking one day, and I said, "You know what? I know you have your podcast with Theo. If you would, wouldn't mind me. My podcast is for the professional sports organizations, people who are into sports and stuff." And he said, "Yeah, sure." So I got an email back from Theo, and he said, "Hey, set up my assistant." Worked with her closely and got him on. He was on his way to a tournament, a golf tournament. He was on his phone in his car, but he was very gracious, very kind. And so one of the first questions I asked him, I said, what's the funnest round of golf that you've, not the best round you played, but the funnest?" And he goes, "It was probably in LA when I played with Gretzky and Michael Jordan."
Wow.
You should have called me. I could have been a caddy.
You could have been the four. Yeah. Holy cow. Wow.
But
Yeah.
but just a great story. He does such good work. I know he's a little bit politicized at times with the vaccine stuff up in Canada, but his goal is just to be. And I asked him at the end of the podcast. I said, "What do you want to be known for?" The Stanley Cup, the All-Star games, the World Cup, whatever. And he goes, "I want to be known as a people connector. I want to take people who've gone through trauma, connect them, so that we can make their lives better." I'm like, fucking rights, man.
Good for him. Wow, that's great.
Well, let me know, because you've got a podcast along sports too. I'll give you an introduction.
That'd be great. I would love it. Yeah, I always enjoyed my conversations with him over the years. But I never had a connection with him outside the locker room or after games and stuff. So yeah, it would be really fantastic to do that. Were you one of the few people that watched the Norm show?
I watched a bit last night, but I didn't before. But
Okay.
I hear the one I saw last night was hysterical.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it didn't take off. Just did one season, 10 episodes. I remember watching a little bit of it, and I really wish I would have, somehow been able to champion it and make it happen a lot more. Who was your favorite impressions he did on Saturday Night Live? Do you remember he did Burt Reynolds, Letterman, he did Tarantino, he did like so many of them. Do you have a favorite?
Hands down, Turd Ferguson, Burt Reynolds, just brilliant.
Yeah.
and he played so well with who was ever doing Sean Connery and Jimmy Fallon. Always tried so hard to keep up to him and Will Ferrell, but they couldn't.
No.
But yeah, the way Norm and Will played off each other was just brilliance. And they probably did stuff like that without a take, right? All right, go. Here's your lines.
One of the things that I keep hearing him say over the last couple of days, and I have heard him, over the years, is that he never was an actor. He was just always a stand-up guy. And he said it was really funny the time that he was on Saturday Night Live, it was all stand-up guys. And he said, they're asking us to act. And we're in there, we're trying to figure out, these scripts, and we're trying to, think of some funny stuff to do, but we're all terrible actors. We're not actors. And all of a sudden they're asking us to act. So he said it was really weird trying to do that. And then all of a sudden he got that opportunity on the desk, and he said that just felt right. It felt comfy. It felt like instead of doing stand up, I was doing sit down and I'm able to, throw my jokes out there. So maybe that's why his show didn't work, because people just thought, oh, this guy can't act. I can't watch this. He's not an actor. But he goes, hey, Jerry Seinfeld had the most popular show on the planet and he can't act. So I thought I could probably pull this off.
Well, I'll take his comedy checks for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. I just love that he was loved by so many people, because it's great. We support Canadians. We love seeing them have their success. He said it was really challenging and hard for Canadians to get success here until they went south.
Yeah.
And, they had to get that validation to suddenly be recognized even in his home country. Did you hear that from other comedians that you've encountered through this country?
Well, it's interesting because if you killed your set at Montreal just for laughs, that got you success. But there were a lot of Tim Allen got his success. He was a struggling stand-up comedian. He had a killer 5 set. If you go watch Tim Allen just for laughs, it'll blow you out of the water. And he had the makings of Tool Time in his set, and that's how he got the TV show and whatnot.
Wow.
So Montreal was the one exception, but a lot of people had to move to New York or LA to get seen, to get heard. But I mean, there's people like Martin Short and Jim Carrey and Dan Aykroyd, all came out of there. So
it's amazing how many great comedians have come from here. But they had to get that validation down south before anybody would recognize them up here. It was crazy. Yeah. Did you read his book? It's a memoir. It's called, released in 2016. Did you get a chance to ever pick that up?
I read it. I'm not sure why I finished it. It was so all over the map.
Yeah.
I mean, it talked about his gambling. That's the one thing I remember from the book is gambling. Where he would, be with his buddies like, hey, hide my money or whatever.
I see. Yeah, I read a lot of reviews of it, and a lot of people didn't really love it. They were like, whoa, I didn't know all this crazy stuff went on with him, and it wasn't what I was expecting.
Did you, when you read it, did you have Norm's voice in your head?
Quite a bit. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's hard not to, right? I didn't actually know that he wrote for Roseanne, Dennis Miller. I didn't know that about him. That was a surprise to hear that the last couple of days.
Yeah, no, I knew he had written on some shows, but I didn't know it was Roseanne.
Yeah, I'd love to find out what episodes and see if we can pull it out.
It was season 1. I'm sure if we Googled it, we could find it out. But from the report or the story I read, it was season 1 of Roseanne.
Did you see the movie Dirty Work?
Yeah, classic.
And what did you think?
Loved it. It was an 80s movie, like all the other 80s movies, like Ferris Bueller's. It was like fun to watch, and it was Norm, so it was quirky. But no, it was a great show, and he still had a following from that movie. People still, dirty work.
Yeah. Tell me, what was ever your longest joke?
Longest joke? Wow. Wasn't as long as a moth. That's a great question. I never been asked that before, but I think it can be different because there's bits, and then there's jokes, and then there's stories.
Okay.
So some guys, a bit is people always say that laughter is the best medicine. I say those people have never had diarrhea.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a bit.
Yeah.
But I can make that into a joke about diarrhea as a kid versus diarrhea as middle-aged or diarrhea as a grandpa, right? So I can push that out and make that a joke. So you have the rule of threes. But if I have that rule of threes, now I have that joke, and I'm telling a story when I was in college, and I had diarrhea, and I backed into the stall in the boys' dorm, and there was no doors on the wall, and I was almost sitting down, and all hell broke loose. And I painted the back of the wall, the toilet, the floor, and all of a sudden I heard, what the was that? And I looked down, and some dude's foot, he was in flip-flops, and his foot was halfway into the stall wall. And I just said, it's shit, and I'm sorry.
Oh, Jesus. Got to get the heck out of there. Oh my
Right?
God.
And luckily the shower room was, you just walked out the door, is the next door in. So I walked into the shower room, pulled my pants off, my shirt off, my shoes, showered off, and then went back about my day.
Oh my God. Wow.
So that would be a story, right? That I would tell that whole story, and within that, I would weave the diarrhea part.
Okay.
So it can get longer and longer. But usually jokes, if they're good, you try and get a punchline at least every 45 to a minute, 45 seconds to a minute. If you're not doing that, but like we were talking about Norm's joke, the moth, right?
Right.
That's a 4 or 5 minute joke till you even get to the punchline.
Yeah.
And typically with a comedian, if you're not doing those punchlines throughout, you've lost the crowd. They're like, all right, next,
Yeah.
But he had a way of telling the story and then hitting everybody with a punchline that you didn't see coming. It was just phenomenal.
I know, that was the thing. I can't think of another comedian that could tell a story like he did and have it that lengthy and still be able to get the huge laughs. You know, the ADD, ADHD generation, they have very, very limited capacity to sit there and listen to a story, but his stories just seem to be able to keep you engrossed enough, and all of a sudden, bam, out comes the punchline after about 4 or 5 minutes, and it's brilliant, just brilliant.
Exactly.
Can you think of other storytellers that made you ever think, wow, and another comic genius? Because I want to gravitate towards those guys because we've lost the best. I want to try to find some of the ones that are up there.
Another great storyteller, if you go back and YouTube me, he's passed too, George Carlin.
Oh man,
and
one of my all-time favorites.
George. But what I didn't know about George until I read his book was he had 3 different careers. He started out as a joke teller, which I was, and then the next 10 years he went very political, and then his last 30 years he was more observational, like Seinfeld. So here's a guy that was that talented that could take one audience for 3 generations, because he just talked about his life, right? When he was in his 20s, he talked about his 20s. When he was in his 30s, he was all pissed off. And then 40s and on, he was more observational. But living, some of my favorite today, Brian Regan is still not so much a storyteller. He does tell some, but they're not long, drawn out stories. One of my favorites right now is Nate Bargatze. I don't know if you listen to Nate, but he has a story about a dead horse that must be 5 or 6 minutes long. And you're laughing throughout the whole thing, right? Because at the end, it's the huge payoff. But every 45 seconds to a minute, he's he's got another punchline in there, and he's got an older, it's on YouTube, an older album, My Dad's a Clown, and the story of his dad being a clown, and his mom got I can't do it justice, but his mom got a call from the hospital because his dad had had a heart attack or something had gone wrong at the mall when he was doing his clown thing. And now he was at the hospital. So they're racing to the hospital and they can't find this. And they're like, yeah, there's some crazy clown running around. They're like, yeah, that's him. But yeah, Nate Bargatze does a really, really good job.
Nate Bargatze. Okay. Wow. I want to try to play a couple of short clips of Norm.
Okay.
Let's intermix it. I'm going to try to find it here. I'm going to share the screen and see if I can pull it up. Oh, okay. Here's some pictures of him. That's some of his book. Here's a Yuck Yucks performance. Let's just listen to a little bit of it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We're not hearing sound, so let me see why. Okay.
We can
Funny.
edit it out.
Say that again.
We can
Edit this out. Yeah, right.
or can you bring it up on your?
Yeah, I don't know why the audio. We were having audio troubles just coming on here.
And screen share, and then bring it up for your screen.
Yeah, I did that.
Oh, because it didn't go to screen share for me on my end.
Didn't. Yeah, I pressed screen share and it.
Yeah. Have you clicked on your browser? Because it's not showing the screen share on the screen.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I have an echo now because I have two windows open.
Do 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 do. What a time machine.
Yeah. How do I get rid of this guy? Can I get rid of this guy without getting rid of this guy? So am I a black screen to you right now?
No, you're on the bottom, and then one says Darren Campbell. But typically, if you're screen sharing, it should show your computer screen, and then we'll be like on the side smaller.
Yeah, I'm so frustrated because I'm using my other laptop that I typically don't. I use it as a secondary. I think that's what my issue is. But how do I get rid of this particular one? Okay, let's try one more time. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So that's no good. Yeah. How could I have disabled that?
Are there 3 dots at the very bottom next to reactions or something? To the right, at the bottom of the screen?
3 dots.
Or maybe because you got the other person on there, can you hang up the other person?
Yeah. How am I going to hang that one up with making sure that I don't.
Is it on the same laptop?
Yeah. I'm going to hang this one up. Let's see.
No, you're gone. Now it's just your name.
Okay. So.
But try hitting screen share. Maybe it'll work now.